Hey everyone, before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because this one right here, is going to leave you speechless. My name is Lucy Bennett, and what I'm about to tell you is the kind of family secret that doesn't just crack a home, it shatters it. I grew up in a small American family that looked perfect from the outside: White House, trimmed hedges, neighborhood block parties. But inside we were stitched together with favoritism, silent pressure, and secrets that nobody talked about. My dad, Robert Bennett, a tough, hard-working construction guy from Portland. Honest, loyal, a man who'd give you the shirt off his back. My mom, Elaine, the picture-perfect housewife, except she had one flaw. She loved my brother, Jason, a little too much and protected him from everything. And then there was Jason, the golden child, charming smile, big dreams, and a talent for finding trouble faster than he found solutions. And finally me, Lucy, the responsible one. The helper. The fixer. The one who stayed out of trouble. Until trouble came looking for me. Just 24 hours before the anniversary dinner that would change everything, I was still in my Seattle apartment, surrounded by fabric samples, sketches, marketing notes. The quiet rhythm of the life I'd built entirely on my OWNO shortcuts. No bailouts. No borrowed money. Dad always told me, "Lucy, you're just like me. You work for what you want." And he said it with so much pride it felt like sunshine. He never said that to Jason because Jason always got things handed to him. But that night I packed my suitcase, feeling something strange in my chest. A heaviness I couldn't explain. A week earlier, Jason had called me, and something was off. His voice was too soft, too careful. "Hey, Dad's not feeling well. We might cancel the anniversary dinner." I frowned. Cancel? He just emailed me about the wine order. Silence. Then a forced answer. "Yeah, well, maybe you just shouldn't come this time." That was the first red flag. The second red flag appeared the moment I called Dad myself, and he answered with a cheerful, "Lucy, you're still coming, right? Wait till you see what your mother planned." Jason lied. And not a little lie. A big one. On the plane I stared out the window, telling myself I was overthinking. Maybe Jason just wanted attention. Maybe Mom didn't want us arguing. Maybe it was nothing. But my gut kept whispering, "This dinner isn't about celebration. It's about control." By the time the plane landed, that whisper felt like a warning. The Bennett house looked exactly the same, too perfect, like a photograph someone refused to update. Mom greeted me with a smile so polished it almost hurt my eyes. Jason stood behind her, grinning like someone who just passed a lie detector barely. "Lucy, you made it," he said. But his eyes weren't happy. They were nervous, alert, watchful. And suddenly, I didn't feel like a daughter coming home. I felt like an outsider trespassing. The next morning smelled like bacon and pine candles, Mom's usual hostess routine. But something felt off. The house was too clean. Every picture frame shining like it had been polished twice. Every candle perfectly spaced. Every corner staged. It wasn't hospitality, it was performance. Dad sat at the breakfast table, cheerful, healthy, absolutely nothing like the sick version Jason had described. Jason, meanwhile, barely ate, stared at his phone, avoided my eyes. When Dad stepped away, Mom leaned in. "Lucy, tonight, don't bring up work or money. Your brother's under a lot of stress." "Stress from what?" I asked. She hesitated, just long enough for the lie to flicker. "You know Jason, he's just figuring things out." But I noticed something then. Her nails, usually perfect, were chipped. That wasn't stress. That was fear. Later, I overheard Jason in the next room, his voice sharp and low. "No, I told you I'll pay next week. I said I have it handled. Don't call me again." He hung up fast when he saw me. "What was that about?" I asked. Business, he said too quickly. Too defensive. Too rehearsed. When he slipped out of the room, I saw the stack of envelopes on the counter. Receipts. Payments. A name I recognized. Dad's investment firm. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Very wrong. That evening I went upstairs to my old room. An email notification blinked on my phone. Transfer completed. $200,000. My heart stopped. My name was on it. The sender? A joint account linked to Jason Bennett. Everything inside me went cold. The dinner wasn't just a family event anymore. It was a trap, and I had no idea how deep the betrayal went. But one thing was certain, the truth was coming out at that table. Before the anniversary dinner, I barely slept. I just lay there in my old bedroom, staring at the glow of my phone screen, scrolling through every transaction tied to my name. Small test transfers at first, then the big one, the one that could ruin me. $200,000, gone, and every digital signature pointed to me. But the login access, the IP address, the timing, it all came from inside this house. My own family. By sunrise, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from clarity. Someone had set me up. And the person I suspected most was walking around downstairs like nothing was wrong. When I finally went to the kitchen, Mom was pouring coffee. Humming softly like it was any normal morning. I slid my phone on the counter, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom, did you know about this? She blinked, confused or pretending to be. Know about what, honey? So I turned the screen toward her. The number glowed between us. $200,000 stolen under my name. Her face didn't break in shock. He tightened, then softened, like she'd been expecting this moment. Lucy, please. Her voice cracked in a way that didn't sound like guilt. It sounded like pleading. Jason was in trouble. He said it was temporary. He said he'd put it back before anyone noticed. My stomach dropped. Before who noticed? Dad or me? Her silence answered for her. You've always been independent, she whispered. You wouldn't miss it. Your brother needed help. That sentence sliced through me deeper than anything else. You wouldn't miss it if my hard work, my savings, my future didn't matter if I existed only to cushion Jason's mistakes. I didn't say a word. I just picked up my phone and walked out the door before she could try to justify it again. I drove straight across town to the only person who never once treated us differently, Aunt Marjorie. Her diner smelled like burnt toast, cheap coffee, and honesty. She didn't even pretend to be shocked. When I told her what happened, I figured, she said, sliding a folder toward me like she'd been waiting for this. Inside were receipts, photos, notes she'd taken. Your brother came in here last month flashing $100 bills, talking about some investment deal. I kept the receipts. Figured someone might need them. Hotel charges, watches, payments. All dated exactly when the money disappeared. I felt my throat close, but this time it wasn't fear, it was confirmation as she'd already sent copies to Dad's lawyer, Caroline. Caroline called me immediately. Lucy, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is financial fraud. If your father thinks you took the money, you need to clear your name fast. My voice came out steady. I'm not confronting him yet. Not until they're both sitting in front of me. Then make sure you have proof ready. I looked down at the folder in my hands, at every screenshot, every timestamp, every fraudulent signature. I already do. When I returned home, the sun was setting, soft, golden, the kind of evening that should have felt warm. Inside, the table was set. Candles, wine glasses, silverware so polished it could have shown every crack in our family. Mom fussed over the plates. Jason poured wine like he hadn't stolen my identity, and I sat quietly at the end of the table, my phone beside my plate. The folder ready. I didn't say a word. Didn't reveal what I knew, because the truth was coming, and this time it wouldn't be whispered. Behind closed doors. It would be spoken out loud for everyone to hear. I watched Mom give Jason a look, a tiny nod, like they were sharing some secret rhythm. I watched Jason glance at me, his smile tight, almost trembling for a moment, one impossible moment. I wondered if he felt even a flicker of guilt, but then he looked away and I realized he didn't. Maybe he never did. The room filled with small talk. My dad joking about his new gray hairs, Marjorie teasing him, family friends chattering about weather and work, and I sat there, quietly counting the seconds until the truth would hit the table like a hammer, because the moment was coming. I could feel it in my bones. Dad leaned back in his chair, wiping his hands with a napkin, laughing at something someone said. Then slowly he turned toward me. "Lucy," he began. My heart stilled. "Here it comes. Tell me something." The chatter faded. The forks lowered. The room seemed to hold its breath. "That $200,000 I gave you, what did you do with it?" I felt the air leave my lungs. Mom froze. Jason's face drained of color. Every smile around the table vanished. This was it. The moment everything would collapse or be rebuilt. I kept my voice steady. "What money?" And the chandelier above us buzzed softly, filling the silence that was waiting to explode. The moment I said, "What money?" the entire room changed. It was like the air thickened, like the walls leaned in closer, like every person sitting there suddenly remembered they had a front row seat to something explosive. Dad didn't blink, he just stared at me, confusion slowly turning into something harder, heavier. "Lucy, the $200,000 I transferred to you months ago." His voice was calm, but the calm that comes before thunder. Mom's hand tightened around her wine glass. Jason's fingers twitched like he was trying not to bolt from his seat. I sat up straighter. "I never received that money." Dad frowned the way he does when blueprints don't line up. "Lucy, I have a confirmation. It shows your name, your account." My pulse pounded, but my voice stayed level. "Then maybe you should look closer at who else had access to that account." That was it. The first crack in the room. Mom stiffened like she'd been hit. Jason's eyes widened, just for a moment before he forced a smile. Dad opened his mouth, but Jason cut in too fast, too loudly. "Dad, come on, it's not a big deal. Lucy probably forgot. She's got so much going on in Seattle." Dad snapped his head toward him. "Forgot? Jason, $200,000 isn't a grocery list." Jason's smile twitched, then broke. I could feel every guest watching us, pretending to look at their plates, but listening so hard the entire house felt like one giant ear. Marjorie didn't even pretend. She set down her wine glass and stared directly at Jason, like she already knew how this would end. Dad leaned forward again, confusion turning into something like hurt. "Lucy, if you didn't use the money, then who did?" I didn't look away. I didn't soften it. I didn't protect anyone this time. "Why don't we ask Jason?" The room froze again. A deeper freeze this time. One that went straight to the bone. Jason swallowed hard. His voice cracked. "Dad, I can explain." "Explain what?" I cut him off. "The transfer you made using my digital signature. Or the hotel bills that showed up right afterward?" A tiny gasp escaped someone at the table. Dad turned slowly to Jason, his face pale. "What is she talking about?" Jason opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound coming out, so I reached for my phone. Hand steady, heart steady, truth steadied. I unlocked the folder I'd been saving for this exact moment, and slid it across the table until it rested right in front of my father. Every transaction, every timestamp, every fraudulent signature, all glowing on the screen. Dad scrolled, his jaw tightened, his eyes went blank. Like he was reading the obituary of the son. He thought he knew. Then his hand began to shake. "Jason," he whispered. "You did this." Jason's breath hitched. Dad, please, it's not what you think. I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back. Dad's voice erupted, sharp, cold, nothing like I'd ever heard. Borrowed? You forged your sister's identity. You stole from her. Mom shot up from her chair so fast her glass tipped. Robert, stop yelling. He made a mistake. Dad turned to her, disbelief flooding his face. A mistake? Elaine, you knew. She froze, tears already gathering in her eyes. I thought he'd put it back, she whispered. He was drowning. He needed help. If Lucy didn't find out, no one would get hurt. I laughed out a broken, bitter sound I didn't recognize as mine. You thought I'd never find out? You thought my future, my name, my career didn't matter? You let him take everything. Jason stood suddenly, hands trembling. I was desperate, Lucy. I didn't mean to ruin anything. You let Dad blame me, I said quietly. You sat there and let him look me in the eye and ask what I did with money you stole. Jason's shoulders collapsed. The guests didn't move. Not a single one, even the chandelier above us seemed to stop buzzing, as if the house itself wanted to hear every word. Dad's voice dropped low, the kind of low that comes before something breaks. You two planned this, he said to my mother. She shook her head, pleading. Robert, please, everything I did was for our family. Dad slammed his hand on the table so hard the plates rattled. No, Elaine. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't sacrifice one child to protect another. Jason's face crumpled. Dad, don't do this. We can fix it. Just give me time. Dad reached for his phone. You're right. We can fix it. He dialed without hesitation. My mother screamed. Robert, stop. But he didn't look at her. Not once. Yes, he said into the phone, voice steady. I need to report a theft. $200,000. Jason's knees buckled. Mom grabbed his arm, her voice breaking. Please, Robert, don't do this to him. Dad didn't flinch. He did this to himself. And then everything shattered. The sirens in the distance. The whispers among the guests. The color draining from Jason's face when the officers arrived. Their flashlights cut across the room, blue and red lights spinning across our perfect dinner table, turning everything cold and hollow. Jason didn't fight, didn't argue. He just lowered his head as they asked him to stand. Mom sobbed against him, begging, pleading, clinging to him like she could undo every choice he'd made. But he didn't look at her. Not once. Dad signed the statement with a hand that trembled just slightly when he finally turned to me. His voice was cracked, raw. Lucy, I'm so sorry. I swallowed hard. You believed what they told you, I whispered. You had every reason to. He reached for my hand, but I gently pulled it away. Not out of anger, but out of something heavier. You wanted to know what I did with your money, I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. I protected it from them. As Jason was led out the door, Mom followed, her cries echoing down the hall. The door slammed. The sirens faded. The room fell into complete, heavy silence. The kind of silence that happens after truth finally burns everything down. Marjorie walked over and rested a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, she whispered. I stared at the dimming phone screen, the folder still open, glowing faintly in the dark. Maybe, I breathed. But it doesn't feel like it. Dad sank into his chair, shoulders collapsing. I raised them both, he whispered, more to himself than anyone. How did we end up here? There was nothing left to say. Nothing that could glue the pieces back together. Outside, the patrol car rolled away, lights fading into the distance, and inside that once perfect home, all that was left was the faint hum of the chandelier, the smell of cold food, and a silence that felt like the end of something we'd never get back. The police lights were gone, the guests were gone. And the house that once felt too loud suddenly felt like a tomb. Dad sat alone at the dining table, staring at the empty chair where Jason had been minutes ago. The untouched plates, the spilled wine, the folded napkins, everything looked frozen like a photograph of a life that no longer existed. That I stood there, not knowing if I should go upstairs or walk out or just sit beside him. But Dad spoke before I could choose. "Lucy," he said quietly, "I don't know how to fix this." His voice was thin, the voice of a man who'd spent his whole life fixing buildings, companies, foundations, but never expected he'd need to fix his own family. That I walked closer but didn't sit down yet. "There's nothing to fix," I said softly. The truth was always there. It just finally came out. He nodded slowly, but his eyes were glassy, unfocused. "Your brother, your mother," he swallowed. "This isn't how I raised them." I hesitated. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because my voice felt too heavy. "You raised us to be honest," I said. "You taught us that integrity matters more than anything." Some of us remembered that lesson. His face tightened with pain, not at the words but at the reality behind them. Dad finally stood up, walked toward the living room, and lowered himself onto the couch like his bones were suddenly made of stone. "I should have seen it," he whispered. "The gambling, the debt, the way he changed. I told myself it was just stress. I knew this wasn't new grief for him. It was old guilt resurfacing." That I sat down next to him, not touching but close enough. "He made his choices," I said. "You didn't push him toward any of them." He shook his head. "But I protected him for so long, that maybe I taught him he'd always be protected." That hit something deep because it was true. Jason had always been the golden child. The one Mom shielded, the one Dad excused, the one everyone expected to succeed. And maybe that expectation became the weight that crushed him. Dad leaned back, eyes closing for a moment. "Your mother kept this from me," he said. "There's no version of this where that's okay." I didn't respond. Some truths don't need agreement, they just sit in the air, heavy and undeniable. The front door creaked open. Mom walked in slowly, her face streaked with tears, mascara smudged, hands trembling like she'd aged 10 years in an hour. "I got him a lawyer," she said quietly, not looking at either of us. "He's at the station. They won't keep him overnight." Dad didn't move, didn't speak. She stepped closer, but the distance between them felt like miles. "Robert, please." "I'm sorry." I was trying to protect both our children. Dad finally opened his eyes and looked at her. Not angry, just tired. "You protected one child," he said softly, "and sacrificed the other." Mom's breath hitched. "I thought if we gave Jason time." "Time to do what?" Dad cut her off, his voice low but sharp. "Steal more? Fall deeper? Hurt Lucy again?" Mom wiped her face with shaking hands. "He was drowning." "So you handed him Lucy's life raft," Dad said. Silence again. The kind that wraps around your throat and makes it hard to breathe. Mom finally turned to me, eyes red and pleading. "Lucy, please understand. I didn't think he'd let it go this far." I looked at her for a long time, not with anger but with the kind of clarity that hurts more than anger ever could. "You didn't think he'd get caught," I said. She flinched, tears slipping down her cheeks. "That's not fair." "It's the truth," I whispered, and she knew it. She broke down, covering her face with both hands, sobbing into the quiet of the house. Dad stood up slowly. "Elaine," he said, "I think you should stay with Marjorie tonight." Mom looked at him like he'd just ripped the floor out from beneath her. You're sending me away?" "I'm asking for space," he said. "For the first time in our marriage. I need you to hear me." Her eyes filled again and she nodded silently, defeated. She grabbed her purse, her coat, and walked to the door. Before she stepped out, she turned to me. "Lucy, I'm sorry," she whispered. "I love you." I nodded, but I didn't say it back. Not tonight. The door closed with a soft final click, and just like that, she was gone too. Dad exhaled shakily and sank back into the couch. Everything's broken, he whispered. I looked around the room, at the shattered family portrait we'd all pretended was real. No, I said gently. Everything is finally honest. He looked at me, eyes full of something raw and painful, but also grateful. You're stronger than all of us, he said. I shook my head. I just got tired of being the quiet one. We sat there for a long time, not speaking, not moving, just breathing in the truth that had been buried for too many years. Outside, the night was still. No sirens now, no shouting, no pretending. Just the beginning of whatever came next. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what that would look like.